Another cold day, at least no rain I guess, tons of clouds though. And what did I read today? I thought this was kind of interesting. You know, there's been recent news about drones flying around sporting events and them wanting to do something to stop it. How about this one? It's kind of interesting. It says here, the FAA's plan to stop drones from spoiling the Super Bowl. So they first talk about the incident in general, for example, saying how a Pennsylvania man faces felony federal charges and up to 4 years in prison for flying an unlicensed drone at the AFC Championship game on January 28th. And because of this, they're trying to, I guess, do something, if that's what you want to say, to stop this from happening for things like the upcoming Super Bowl and all that. And it talks about things like temporary flight restrictions, saying here that around stadiums are standard during NFL regular season and playoff games since 9/11, typically restricting drones that fly at or below 3,000 feet AGL with 3 nautical miles of any venue that seats 30,000 or more, but stadiums often ill-equipped to enforce the rules, and only the FBI and Department of Homeland Security have the authority to jam or bring the drones down. So that might be an interesting point, because when you even mentioned too, why was the FBI involved in this? So it's basically the technicality by the sounds of this anyways, because they treat every single drone as a quote aircraft, and if somebody literally, I guess, hits it or knocks it down, it's no different, I guess, legally than someone shooting down a huge manned aircraft. So it's more about the legalities, I guess. Given a rise in drone-related incursions, the FAA this week outlined the TFR in place around Allegiant Stadium and the surrounding area. Flights of all kinds will be heavily restricted on game day, with various other limitations in place throughout the week. The agency also released guidelines for GA pilots and other pilots. Like traditional pilots, drone pilots who enter the TFR without permission could face criminal prosecution or fines in excess of $30,000, or their drone may be confiscated. And with that, they're saying how they need to change the laws when it comes to drones and being able to take it down, I guess you could say. It says here, without a change in federal law, mass gatherings will remain at risk from malicious and unauthorized drone operations. For more than a year, we have been calling for the passage of the bipartisan Safeguarding the Homeland from the Threats Posed by Unmanned Aircraft Systems Act, which would empower state and local law enforcement to safely mitigate drones. It's time for Congress to act, the NFL said in a statement to Flying. The bill the NFL spokesperson is referring to, introduced in May, would extend FBI and DHS drone takedown authority to officials who can act more quickly or who may even be on site. The legislation has been endorsed by the NFL, MLB, NASCAR, and NCAA. So, would you agree with that in general? It just sounds like an issue that government's created, trying to classify again every single drone as a manned aircraft. I would think common sense anyways. If you fly in a place where you're not supposed to in general, let's just say in a military area, or you go literally like right above the stadium, like that type of scenario, I think it should be common sense where you expect your drone to be lost if someone takes it down in that regards. But again, because of all the technicalities and so forth, it's treated like a huge manned aircraft and they can't really do anything about it. So it's an interesting thought. Should they include more stipulations so that authority figures can quote take down drones, or should they go back to the drawing board and say, okay, maybe you shouldn't classify everything as a huge manned aircraft, for example, and use existing laws to go after people who you feel are doing something wrong per se? And when I thought of, I guess, dangerous drones, I often say it comes down to what you're using and how. And how about this one? Apparently it's war related, where there are people using drones, and I guess to take them down, if you're not equipped, you use anything. This one says, Russian soldier tries to fend off drone with a bottle of water. Russian soldiers began to use plastic bottles against Ukrainian drones, as shown in a video taken near Advocacy and published on social networks by soldiers of the Unmanned Attack Aircraft Complexes Company of the 110th Separate Mechanized Brigade, named after Colonel General Mark Bezruka. Bottles were adopted after such means of protection as automatic weapons, sticks, and snowballs turned out to be not so effective. It shows how the invader, taken by surprise in an open area, swats at the FPV drone circling around him with a bottle of water. Yeah, it's one of those things, I guess, whatever works, works, huh? especially if you're using like these smaller drones. Even the simple twig, for example, is good enough to take it down. I think trees and stuff are usually a drone operator's worst enemies for people flying it for fun and so forth. But again, like in these cases, it depends on what you're using and how. Overall, you could use anything as a weapon, even like a stick, for example, or like a rock in the ground. But I don't see people saying ban them all in the public and so forth. You just deal with it in terms of people using it in a bad way and all that, correct? And then I was watching this video. Apparently it was going viral. It had to do with our Prime Minister. He made a comment, something about making Canada great again. That's not what Canadians want. I think I know the mix-up, but how would you react as someone who saw this video for the first time? Even if you're not in Canada, would you see this as a positive or a negative remark? So you can see this here first.
Mr. Speaker, what we hear from the Leader of the Opposition is under the previous Conservative government, everything was perfect, and what he is proposing to do is to make Canada great again. That is not what Canadians want. He is pining for a nostalgia that, quite frankly, Canadians do not feel. They remember what he did as part of Stephen Harper's failed housing minister. He remembers the people who, the rights of Indigenous peoples violated, the ignoring of environmental responsibilities, and the lack of an environmental and economic plan for the future. We're going to continue on.
So what would you think about that? On a surface level, this makes absolutely no sense, where it's almost like someone implying, yeah, I know things are bad now, but people don't want things to get better. Like, that doesn't make sense, right? My only other thought is, obviously this is very political, so he tried to use it as a way to say, hey, everything that party comes up with is bad, so you have to see this as a bad thing for the country, for example. But it doesn't make sense on a surface level, I guess, like just based on the words alone. Like here, if you don't agree with what the other side's saying, or you're trying to, quote, make them look bad, then focus on the facts. Explain what exactly is it that he says or propose is that bad. When you just come from an angle of trying to make the other look bad, or trying to just validate your personal beliefs without actual facts, it just comes across as kind of crazy, isn't it? Then again, this is what politics is, in my opinion. A bunch of people just yelling at each other and arguing with no facts usually. Alright, see you guys later.